This is Karat nuclear weapons in the Trump-Putin era. This is Can Poland nuclear or whatever it was.
There has been an increase in talk in Europe and East Asia recently about nuclear proliferation. The main reason have been the irresponsible actions of the world's two biggest nuclear powers. I believe the past is very instructive on this topic, but not the story of existing nuclear powers and their bombs. We all know how and why they got the bomb. I believe we can learn a lot on this topic by looking at the countries that tried to get the bomb, but in the end didn't get the bomb. These countries and their programs are largely unknown to us and may give us insights into what the future may look like if nuclear proliferation becomes more attractive or even spreads. Sweden. Yes, the nice, friendly, peace-loving Swedes once had a secret nuclear weapons program. Why? The Second World War left a deep impression on Sweden. As a neutral state, it may have stayed out of the war, but Sweden also got a front row seat at seeing almost every other neutral state getting Belgiumed. It was also not lost on the Swedes that they were next in line and that there were German plans to invade and occupy them. The end of the Second World War also saw Sweden sitting a Baltic coastline away from an aggressive and expansionist Soviet Union that had just gobbled up much of the Baltic coast. The Soviets opened Cold War relations with the Swedes by shooting down a Swedish plane over international waters, violating Swedish waters with submarine incursions, and trying to blackmail Sweden into leaving the island of Gotland undefended with threats of invasion. To add to that, the Swedes remembered what their Finnish neighbors went through in 1939 and knew if the Soviets ever invaded, they would also have to fight alone. Combined with the fact that the Soviets got the bomb, Sweden began a secret nuclear weapons program and got very close, within just a year of having the bomb by 1962. The Swedish program was meant to be entirely defensive, not to be used on Soviet territory, but on Soviet armies advancing into Sweden in case of an invasion. By the mid-1960s, the Taunt and arms control treaties cooled down the Cold War tensions. The Swedes ended their nuclear weapons program and decided to focus on diplomacy as a means of ensuring peace. The reason Sweden used to pursue the bomb is simple. It was threatened. There was another country that had a secret nuclear weapons program that was similar to the Swedish one, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was haunted by the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, when the Nazis and Soviets conspired to divide up Poland. Now squished between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, Yugoslavia believed that the same fate could befall them. The result was one of the largest defense programs in Europe, arming Yugoslavia to the teeth, and also a clandestine...
I love the freaking guns right on top and then the helmet. Oh, yeah. The fact that a lot of nations felt safe, like allying themselves with a nuclear power in order to defend them in times of need. Like the U.S. is supposed to be like the nuclear defense for some of these other nations. Just like I know Russia has backed a few. India was backed by a few until India basically got its own nuclear power. Like eventually they'll all have their own nuclear power. And some people just shouldn't have it. And honestly, it's one of those Pandora's box. Like, should we have ever had it? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, the fusion power is still one of the best kinds of powers out there. I think we should invest more time and effort into nuclear energy, but we don't. We don't. But we could honestly spend more time on that and actually get a lot of clean energy. It's still one of the cleanest energy sources out there. But we don't spend time and effort trying to learn more of that. No, because anytime someone hears nuclear, they always think of bombs. They don't think of like the power that comes from it, the what can actually be utilized with it.
Nuclear weapons program. Speaking of things you may want to keep secret, here's a reminder of how important it is to keep sensitive data secure and to yourself, which includes your
Product
personal
placement.
online data. Your internet privacy and security is important, and ExpressVPN is a great tool for you to keep your personal data secure. With ExpressVPN, 100% of my network traffic is encrypted and kept safe. It works on all devices, and with its optional dedicated IP service on the screen right now to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months for free. Thank you to ExpressVPN.
I hate how
Being a
quiet
very
this video
dysfunctional
is.
State, research was split into 3 separate research institutes in Croatia, Slovenia, and Serbia, which resulted in constant accidents and constant delays to overcome because of a lack of coordination. Yugoslavia first got its nuclear material from the Soviets, but after Stalin tried to have Tito killed, that stopped, causing even more delays. Adding to this entire clusterfudge of a mess, the program cost around €500 million per year in today's money. By far the most impressive thing about the Yugoslav nuclear weapons program is that their intelligence service successfully stole enough heavy water and enriched uranium needed for several bombs from a Norwegian nuclear research facility. But besides that, the program was shut down, then turned on again, then turned off again. Then the Indians became the first non-aligned state with the bomb, and Yugoslavia became seething envious because they wanted to be the leader of the non-aligned movement, so it was turned on again. When the Yugoslav economy started collapsing, more cost cuts were made, sometimes in the most insane of places. For example, the
Levi India is doing it, should I say, the latest info, prototype fast breeder reactor. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. It's just like, we need more nuclear power. We need more nuclear power.
warehouse in Serbia, where enough highly enriched nuclear material for several dozen bombs was stored, was guarded by a single Serb police officer with a wire fence. The Yugoslav nuclear weapons program was very dangerous, but not dangerous in that Yugoslavia could have gotten the bomb and potentially used it, but dangerous for Yugoslavia. Dangerous in how irresponsible the Yugoslavs were in handling nuclear material and basically playing chicken with the possibility of there being a nuclear accident. One of the main lessons the Yugoslav program shows us is that making the bomb is dangerous. After the collapse of Yugoslavia, the Serbs sold everything to the Russians. There's another country with a secret nuclear weapons program similar to that of Yugoslavia. Egypt. For Egypt, there was one single defining moment that made them
How
want
to
get the
bomb.
the Suez Crisis. Even though the Americans and Soviets teamed up and forced the British and French out while telling them that the age of European empires was over, Egypt didn't fully trust that promise enough. Let's take a step
Of course
back.
not.
The Suez Canal makes Egypt one of the single most valuable pieces of real estate on this planet. Owning this real estate means you can control which Asians have access to Europe and which Europeans have access to Asia. Every post-colonial state to a degree fears the return of empire, but Egypt worries about that more than most. Because if empire ever does come back, then the Egyptians are, with their unusually high-value geography, in the unfortunate position of being the primary target of any new empire in a hypothetical new age of imperialism. So when the Suez Crisis was over, the Egyptians began secretly working on the bomb. The Soviets provided research reactors and Egypt refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. When China got the bomb in 1964, Egypt was very delighted and overjoyed, but then China refused to share it with them. Then the Six-Day War wrecked the Egyptian
Make
military.
your
The
own.
enormous costs of rebuilding the army coincided with the decline of the Egyptian economy and the failure of Arab socialism, making it clear that the bomb was unaffordable. Then Israel got the bomb. Egypt signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty and adopted a new stance as one of the most vocal opponents of nuclear proliferation in the world and the loudest opponent of nuclear weapons being developed
Of
or
course.
deployed to the Middle East. In a weird way,
Especially once they put themselves in a situation to where they have literally signed the ability to ever make a nuclear weapon, they will be adamantly against any nation having a nuclear weapon, because then any other nation that gets a nuclear weapon, well, put shade on them because they weren't able to do it in time.
This was not the end of this particular story, because many of the Egyptian nuclear engineers who had worked on the Egyptian bomb went to Iraq, where Saddam Hussein pursued the bomb after it became obvious that the Israelis had it. Iraq got a French reactor to work on the program, and then the Israelis bombed it. Iraq shares this experience with another country, its neighbor Syria, because Assad got the idea in his head that the bomb may make up for his lack of chin, and then the Israelis bombed it. We can learn a simple truth about nuclear proliferation here. Once a country acquires the bomb, it will try to prevent others from getting the bomb. But paradoxically, having the bomb makes your neighbors also want the bomb. So you end up in a situation that significantly increases the regional potential for conflict. There's something else here that we learn. While the Assad regime
Doing research and achieving is not wrong, but the utilization of it is what is the problem. Like during the 1971 U.S. deployed its nuclear submarines, yes, in India, so India would stop what it doing to break Pakistan, but Russia sent its nuclear submarines supporting India. India at that point in time was like another, well, it was the continuation of the Cold War. It's still not going on. It's still going on. Every single nation playing chicken with one another. It's just more nations have entered the fold. Like U.S. stopped the Anthropic Thebal 5 or Mythos 5 access. I'm not entirely sure what that is. Anthropic Thebal 5.
believed that the bomb was going to secure it, it failed to realize that how this regime treated its own people
But
was
yeah,
what would actually
the utilizing of it is the real issue, in making the other nations like nations shouldn't be forced to do things under threat of nuke. Like that should never be the case. That should never be the case.
down. And there's another country where this lesson also applies. Libya. In the 1970s, Libya bought a large arsenal of modern weapons from Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union. They immediately used that arsenal to invade their neighbor Chad, only to get absolutely mauled by Chad's Toyota pickup trucks. Humiliated by this, Libya tried to get the bomb, but tried doing so on the cheap. Libya spent decades basically begging other nuclear powers for the bomb and nuclear material. When communism died, Libya tried really hard to scramble together a bomb from the black markets of communist bloc weapons arsenals. All these attempts failed, and in the end, it wasn't foreign powers who threatened that regime, but how that regime treated its own people. What is impressive, though, is that the regime managed to keep its nuclear weapons program secret for decades, and it is not the only country that managed to do that. There is also Romania.
The following segment of the video is produced by Poland Ball Official, the YouTube channel of the artists who run the Poland Ball.
Gosh, this is so quiet.
Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. Romania had a secret nuclear weapons program. And the reason
That
that
is not Cold War, but the regional war. It's still been going on. It's still been going on.
The reason Romania wanted the bomb was to escape. Ceausescu hated the Warsaw Pact, and he really hated the Soviet Union, who he saw as arrogant,
This audio
condescending, and a threat
sucks.
to his rule. The only country in the region that Ceausescu got along with was Yugoslavia. Ceausescu didn't just want the bomb for defense. He had a plan for Romania. Get the bomb, leave the Warsaw Pact, declare neutrality, form an alliance with Yugoslavia, and join the non-aligned states. Ceausescu had to be extremely careful, because the moment the Soviets would have found out, they probably would have repeated what happened to Czechoslovakia in 1968. And if the Americans had found out, they probably would have told the Soviets. So to deceive two sides with one scheme to benefit himself, Ceausescu got American uranium through the Atoms for Peace program, while lying to the Americans that it was just for nuclear reactors, and began to secretly build his bomb. That way, if the Soviets had found out, he could have then roped the Americans into it to either defend himself or look bad by letting
That's
Romania
literally
invade.
the same
The Romanians
story
started
for
building the bomb in
India.
the 1970s.
When they were making their nuclear warhead, they had to do it in secret, hiding it from the other powerful nations because they would have stopped them.
And never quite got there. The program probably substantially contributed to the impoverishment of Romania, though. And when the regime fell, the new government shut down the program the moment they found out about it. This one is very interesting, because the primary use of the Romanian bomb was not to defend oneself, or to assert oneself on the global stage, but to escape a sphere of influence. If we're now again entering a world order where the self-proclaimed global powers try to carve up spheres of influence, this idea of an escape plan bomb may become relevant again.
Let's now talk about another country that you may be surprised to know had a secret nuclear weapons program, Japan. Japan is the only country against which the bomb was used, which Japan likes to remind everyone of, and some Japanese use to portray themselves as victims of the Second World War. What is less well known, and might surprise some of you, is that Japan had its own nuclear weapons program during the Second World War. There's a degree of Western-centric miseducation responsible here. In the West, we learn much about the Second World War in Europe, but barely enough about the Second World War in Asia. There are also a lot of alt history novels, TV shows, and video games set around the terrifying scenario of what the world would look like if the Nazis had gotten the bomb first. The Nazi bomb is the ultimate horror scenario for an alternative history. But what makes all of these scenarios so weirdly Western-centric and false is that Japan got far closer to getting the bomb than the Nazis did. Japan had a far more advanced nuclear weapons program than the Nazis, and not only would Japan have gotten the bomb before the Nazis, Japan was by some estimates just a year behind the Americans in getting the bomb. So why did the Japanese bomb fail? The Japanese Army, the Japanese Navy, the Japanese National Institute for Physical and Chemical Research, and eventually a political splinter group within the Japanese Navy all pursued their own separate nuclear weapons programs. The result of that was in effect that Japan competed with itself over which military branch could get the bomb first, rather than working together to compete with the Americans. The Japanese bomb, however, did live on beyond the war, just not in Japan. Much of the industrial infrastructure to build the Japanese bomb, such as for the production of heavy water and the centrifuges used for uranium enrichment, had been built in occupied Korea. And when the Soviets invaded Korea, these were brought back to the Soviet Union and used to make the Soviet bomb. One thing you can learn here, just as with the Egyptian nuclear engineers, is that a nuclear program can live on beyond its official end by falling into someone else's hands. Japan, to this day, has the know-how, the capital, the industrial capacity, and the resources to make the bomb. The only reason Japan doesn't make the bomb is because it chooses not to make the bomb. And we should not forget that, especially in a time when nuclear proliferation becomes more attractive to countries that previously abandoned such projects. Japan happens to not be alone in this category. There's also South Korea. Korea's first experience with the bomb was not Korean, but as you now know, Japanese. Japanese factories and plants to produce heavy water and the centrifuges used for uranium enrichment were set up in Korea and worked by Korean slave laborers. After the war, the Soviets took everything for their own bomb, and Korea didn't pursue the bomb itself. But after the Vietnam War, Korea got its own nuclear ambitions. When the Americans abandoned South Vietnam, and it just collapsed within a few days, South Korea began to worry that if it ever came to war with the North, the Americans might also just abandon them. So beginning in the 1970s, the South Koreans began a clandestine nuclear weapons program. The South Koreans had to start from scratch.
The problem with the U.S. is that it won't intervene when something bad happens, like Pak has been doing terrorism for almost many years, but he called India friend, but don't support when it needed, but fund Pak, which are used to do terrorism, so that the way we say U.S. is just taking care of the region. So no other power can emerge. Some tactics, destabilization and breaking governments, which happened in Bengal, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Pak. Yeah. I mean, again, it's just the U.S. has no place. The U.S. has no place depicting and defending other nations. It's their own responsibility to deal with the ramifications of their own actions. I don't know why the U.S. always tries to police everything and always takes the side of sometimes the aggressor, especially when it's well known that, heck, one of the most heinous people and evil people to the United States of America was sheltered in Pak, was sheltered there, stayed there for decades in safety. It was just like, what the heck? What the heck?
With clandestine research on enriching uranium conducted throughout South Korean science institutes during the 1980s. This program, however, came to a halt with the end of the South Korean dictatorship, and when the US invaded Iraq, the South Koreans decided to make it public to avoid any fallout from having had a hidden nuclear weapons program. In some ways, even though there is often talk in the media about South Korean nuclear proliferation, the program is very overrated and didn't go that far, which is also the case with another country, Germany. The Nazi nuclear program is very overrated. Yes, I know we like to imagine the dystopian scenarios of the Nazi bomb in novels, movies, and video games, and I am sure the History Channel can make yet another several dozen documentaries with overly dramatic, hyped-up American narration. Yes, Nazis are horrible and evil, but never forget, Nazis are also very stupid. They drove most of their leading nuclear scientists out of the country. They thought the entire scientific field of quantum physics was a Jewish conspiracy. They believed in crackpot nonsense like world ice theory. And then there is German bureaucracy, which divided nuclear research into a dozen competing research institutes tied together through a paper hellscape. But above all, and this is why all the theories about the Nazi bomb are so wrong, the primary purpose of Nazi German nuclear research was not the bomb. The Nazis actually tried to make a nuclear reactor. And here's something that may surprise you. The Nazi research into nuclear energy actually got a second life. After the war, the French scoured through the former Nazi nuclear research sites in occupied Germany. They took both material and scientists back to France, where it was used to create the impressive nuclear energy industry that France is so famous for today. The Germans didn't really start taking the bomb seriously until the Cold War, and their program was very unconventional. Because the long process of scientists and engineers developing a bomb was a non-starter for a Cold War Germany, the German government of the 1950s and 1960s developed a secret military plan that in case of a US withdrawal from NATO, the German army would forcefully occupy all American military bases in Germany and seize control of all American nuclear nuclear weapons stationed in Germany to reverse engineer their own bomb. When the Social Democrats got elected into power, they thought this was nuts and got rid of all of it. Yet there's still a thing to learn here. Think of the impact it would have if those with the bomb left an alliance on those who don't have the bomb. Another thing to learn here, and this is important and often overlooked, it is not only possible but easy to reverse engineer and make the bomb if you can get your hands on one that you stole from someone or on a bomb that someone lost. When Ukraine gave up its bombs in 1994, it did not matter that they didn't have the button. Having a bomb is enough to reverse engineer it. There are 6 American and around 100 Soviet bombs that were lost during the Cold War, most beneath the ocean and in the Arctic. Getting one of them would give you a huge jumpstart in making the bomb. There is a country that is a prime example of this. This country actually did get their hands on a bomb that a nuclear power lost, and then used it to try to reverse engineer the bomb. Spain. It is said that when the bomb drops, only cockroaches survive. And Francoist Spain was the fascist cockroach, the only fascist regime that managed to survive the flames of the Second World War, the last of the fascist regimes surrounded by a world that largely despised it. And that isolation certainly encouraged it to get the bomb. The most significant moment, though, was when Morocco declared independence in 1956. Morocco was a French colony, with Spanish-governed enclaves all over the country. The Spanish also occupied West Sahara and really wanted all of Morocco. So when Morocco instead declared independence, it led to a war between the two from 1957 to 1958. And it was here where Spain decided to get the bomb. The Spanish bomb was not intended as a means of deterrence, but as a weapon to keep its African colonies, and force Morocco into becoming a Spanish colony again, to possibly even rebuild a Spanish empire in West Africa. The way the Franco regime wanted to use the bomb is in many ways how Russia wants to use the bomb today, as a weapon of blackmail and conquest, nuclear imperialism. The Spanish economic miracle of the early 1960s made the funds available, and Spain bought a French nuclear reactor. Some of you will have noticed that most clandestine nuclear weapons programs involve French nuclear reactors. That's because the French don't do inspections of the reactors they sell. A problem Spain had, though, is that its scientists did not have the know-how or expertise of how to build the bomb. Their big breakthrough came in 1966, when an American nuclear bomber crashed in Spanish airspace and 3 of its 4 bombs were lost in Spain. The Americans recovered the bombs, but were not thorough enough. The Franco regime was able to recover enough debris and even nuclear material to reverse engineer the process of how to make the bomb. This set Spain on course to getting the bomb by the mid-1970s, but then, within 2 years, it all fell apart. It started in 1973 when the CIA found out, and Nixon was furious. He had visited Franco 3 years before and wanted to normalize the Franco regime on the global stage. Now, Franco stabbed him in the back. In December of that same year, the man in charge of the nuclear weapons program was assassinated by the Basque terror group ETA. There are a lot of conspiracy theories about this assassination. It was, after all, the most important political assassination in recent European history, because Luis Carrero Blanco was also said to be Franco's successor, and this assassination pretty much started the end of the Franco regime. There are conspiracies that the CIA, Mossad, or the KGB actually pulled the strings of this assassination, and to be clear, all these conspiracies are false. There is no evidence for any of this. The Basque terror group ETA just got really lucky. But the conspiracy theories are still worth mentioning. They ultimately still matter here, because the Franco regime believed them, and it spooked the regime so much that it paused the nuclear weapons program in 1974. Then, Morocco forced Spain into giving up its colony of West Sahara, putting another big nail into the coffin of the nuclear program. And finally, a year later, Franco died. Democracy returned to Spain, and the program was completely dismantled. It is important to take a step back here and appreciate something. This wasn't just
the last regime finally kicked, the one that survived from after World War II finally kicked the
a
bucket.
defensive bomb, or just the Spanish bomb. What happened here is that 30 years after the Second World War, there was almost a fascist bomb. It is worth sitting on that fact and let it sink in a bit, to have a little discussion about something. Whatever your opinion may be on interventions, be they military or other, there is a case to be made here that some regimes should never be allowed to get the bomb. There was another Western dictatorship that also tried to get the bomb. Actually, 2. Brazil and Argentina. The way this came to be is somewhat comical. In 1975,
LOL,
Brazil...
same assassination things happen here too much. But just road accidents, other naturals, but brutal things. I had done research on this and seen many. Yeah, there are a lot of just subtle accidents that happen. Like, again, if you look at like the political families in the United States of America, and there's one in particular, like if you look around the friends, family, people they've like known in, or people who have arguments with them, just take the Clintons, for example. There have been situations where the person had drove into a tree, or they were depressed and took their own life, or they were in the middle from like a mugging. It was a mugging gone wrong. So many situations that get blown over. It's like, I have never known someone who's been in a mugging. Let me think. Yeah, never been in a mugging. I've never known someone who's literally wrapped themselves around a tree. I've never known somebody who's taken their own life. But the fact that there's like 80, 90 something people that the Clintons were in like close connection with that have all done that speaks volumes. And that's just one family. That's just one family. Imagine all the families and all the deaths around, because they do it. They do it. And everyone knows that. That there are hired hits, that there are like, They're made to look, and then the people are paid off to look the other way. Happens everywhere.
Signed a nuclear energy agreement with Germany to build a nuclear reactor in southern Brazil and to work with Germany in nuclear energy research. Seeing this, their neighbors, the paranoid junta in Argentina, got it into their heads that Brazil was actually secretly making the bomb. And based on that paranoid delusion, Argentina started a clandestine program to build the bomb. The Brazilian junta found out about it and then started their own secret program to build the bomb. And so began a new chapter in the dick measuring contest that has been going on in South America for the last 200 years, this time using the world's most dangerous weapons. Because Brazil had the larger, wealthier economy and the Argentine economy was, well, Argentina, the Brazilians were always a step ahead in their program. The Brazilians were also secretly helped by China in making the bomb, while Argentina had their nuclear program under a lot of international scrutiny after the Falkland War. This gave Brazil the definite lead in the program to the point that Brazil actually began constructing the testing site for a soon-to-be-finished bomb. As democracy returned to both, the idea of getting the bomb began to lose steam. So by 1991, Argentina and Brazil agreed to end their nuclear weapons programs and cooperate in nuclear energy research, arguably the only positive to come out of this entire story. This story may seem a bit silly at first, but reveals us something important. If in a region a country starts making the bomb, it can kickstart a regional nuclear arms race that has the potential to destabilize an entire region. Of all the countries we have so far gone through, the ones that got the closest to getting the bomb are Sweden, Japan, Spain, and Brazil. But the country that had a secret nuclear weapons program which got the closest to actually making the bomb and then in the end never made the bomb is someone else. Switzerland. The Swiss nuclear weapons program started the day after the bomb fell on Hiroshima. The government heard the news and decided to build the bomb in that very moment. Initially, the Swiss weren't fully committed with funds and research. Then the 1956 Soviet invasion of Hungary made Switzerland fully commit. The program ran under almost stereotypical Swiss efficiency and precision. Everything was planned out, mapped out, accounted for, and worked perfectly like a fine-tuned, expert-made Swiss watch. The Swiss mapped out a 35-year plan to carefully study how to make a bomb, how and where to acquire the materials, how to assemble the bomb, decided that 200 warheads were desired, where to store bombs and material, how much it would cost, how the costs could be disguised in the federal budget, what delivery vehicle would be used, and how and where the bomb was to be tested. The Swiss even
They planned everything out, just didn't execute it. They knew everything, just didn't finish it.
accounted for other eventualities in their program. They held a national referendum on banning nuclear weapons. The Swiss voted against the ban, thereby granting the project a legal stamp of approval in a direct democracy without making it public that the program already existed. They bought American nuclear reactors instead of French reactors to deliberately allow American inspectors in their sites to create an aura of trustworthiness that was actually part
want
of
to
a
see
planned
rocketry.
deception. They helped apartheid
That's a
South
film I
Africa
really
make the
want to
bomb.
see.
So if they ever got caught, they were able to misdirect investigations by saying that they were actually not getting the bomb for themselves, but just helping the South Africans make the bomb. Their uranium was from the Belgian Congo colony, bought from a Belgium desperately trying to hold on to that colony, thereby getting a large amount with few questions asked. And they picked the French Mirage Free as their means of delivering the bomb. And yes, that jet can be used to drop the bomb. The most impressive thing about the Swiss project is that throughout the entire 40
The U.S.
years of
technically,
this process,
or
from
Europe
1945 to
technically
1988,
has
the
U.S.
Swiss
nukes,
managed
so
to
they
keep
aren't
all of it
nuke-free. Yeah, but they
completely
are
secret. No one
operated by
found
the
out,
U.S.
and nothing ever leaked. From what we know, the Swiss were possibly just a year
They
or
can't
even
do
less
anything
than half a
without
year
the
away
US's
from having the
permission.
bomb by the mid-1980s. But then the big surprise. In 1988, the Swiss just announced to the world that they had a project to build the bomb and that they were stopping it. And here at this point, there's a bit of a disagreement over what actually happened here. One position is that the Swiss bomb ultimately failed, that the lack of know-how combined with all the measures to keep it secret resulted in the project progressing at a snail's pace over the course of 4 decades. And the Swiss army officers who drove this project were largely shaped by the experience of the Second World War. As they began to retire in the 1980s, the project lost steam. The Swiss therefore simply came to terms with the fact that they could not get the bomb. But then there's also another argument about what happened here. We know the Swiss came very close to having the bomb. Now think of all the trouble that countries that secretly develop the bomb have to go through. The sanctions, isolation, becoming a rogue state, and even interventions and war. The Swiss avoided all of that. They walked all the way up to being very close to having the bomb, and then just stopped, turned around and announced to the world that they had stopped. They got all the world's praise for not making the bomb. But here's an important thing that almost everyone overlooks. The Swiss never took a step back. They never dismantled the infrastructure, technology, let alone know-how that they had attained on how to get the bomb. They merely announced a halt to the program. So it is possible that throughout the last 40 years, from the mid-1980s right up to today, the Swiss have always just been a year or maybe even less away from having the bomb, permanently sitting on an almost complete
They're an
project
inch
that they
away
could
from
always
it.
revive. The argument here is that this may have been the plan from the start. Not to actually get the bomb, but to get as close as possible to the bomb without the consequences of actually having the bomb. We could call this the Mad Hatter's bomb. There is no bomb today, there was no bomb yesterday, but there's always a bomb tomorrow. And by doing that, one gets almost the exact same security assurance as actually having the bomb without actually having the bomb. There are a few countries that I did not mention here in this video. Iran is an ongoing story that isn't over yet. South Africa actually got the bomb during apartheid. It just gave up the bomb when apartheid ended. Myanmar has been suspected of secretly making the bomb for decades, but there's no evidence of this actually being the case. Poland and Australia are sometimes brought up, but none of these countries actually had a secret nuclear weapons program. They merely had governments who considered getting the bomb. Ukraine gave up its Soviet-inherited arsenal and is merely pointing out that the lacking security guarantees that it was promised in return now make this agreement technically invalid. Saudi Arabia made diplomatic inquiries on the possibility of buying the bomb from Pakistan, but hasn't fully committed. Of course, someone out there might be secretly making the bomb right now, and we just don't know it yet. History does not repeat, but we can still learn some things here. The examples just presented might give an idea of what may happen if we enter a world in which nuclear proliferation spreads and becomes more attractive. One thing we learn is that France is the world's most irresponsible nuclear power. That might sound like a loaded statement in a world where North Korea exists, but take a look at all the countries who had secret nuclear weapons programs using nuclear material and technology bought from France. I hope the French learned at least some lessons from this. The Mad Hatter's bomb may be the most attractive prospect for countries considering the bomb, but it is also the most difficult. Iran may actually have the Mad Hatter's bomb right now, and would in that case be an example of how it can go wrong. The Yugoslav cluster fudge bomb, toying dangerously with the possibility of a nuclear disaster, is also a prospect for our future.
This video is
Cluster fudges,
obviously
like communist
dated.
Venezuela decide to pursue the bomb. The Libyan scenario of trying to buy the bomb is also manifesting with the Saudi inquiries to buy the bomb from Pakistan. A clandestine nuclear arms race, like the one between Argentina and Brazil, could also repeat. If Turkey, which is increasingly becoming a regional power, decides to pursue the bomb, Greece will almost certainly pursue it as well, or try to stop it, throwing the Mediterranean into a situation of increased conflict potential, similar to how Israel and its neighbors repeatedly clashed over the bomb. By far the most likely scenario to repeat, though, is that of the Romanian escape plan bomb. If we are going to re-enter a 19th century style dog-eat-dog world of great power poker players and small nation poker chips in competing spheres of influence, just as MAGA and Putin envision for us, then getting the bomb to escape a sphere of influence is an increasingly attractive proposition to a lot of countries around the world. Here in Europe, it's the Swedish scenario of the 1950s that is most relevant to us. The war started by Russia and the increasing threats by Russia are the main
Having a
reason why so
nuke
many
now
European
isn't that
countries
useful.
openly
You
discuss
need
nuclear
small
proliferation.
tactical
There are other
nukes with
solutions, such
advanced
as France and
delivery
Britain extending the nuclear
vehicles
umbrella and creating
like
a European
hypersonic
nuclear
missiles,
threat. There is, however, a
etc.
problem with that.
Traditional
The idea that
nukes
French nuclear
on a
weapons
bomber
should not
plane
only
will be
protect
shot
France, but all of
instantly.
Europe
Yeah.
is very controversial and even unpopular in
Like
France.
nukes
And
are no
Britain,
longer like
liking
the
idea of
ultimate
European
form of
nuclear umbrella,
warfare.
is in the
They
awkward
aren't.
position of having made itself entirely dependent on the Americans in the delivery system of its nuclear warheads. Whether or not a country like
Nukes are a form of destruction. They're not a form of warfare. They're just a form of destruction. That's the reason why nobody will use them. Because only those who are incredibly heinous and hate everyone will only use it to destroy the world because they view themselves superior. Any kind of elitist culture, you can never have a nuke, or they will be bombed out of existence because everyone will know that they will have no problem for, you know, the greater good. They're going to push the button and destroy the world. That kind of, you have to destroy that kind of mindset.
Sweden dusts off its old nuclear program, or Poland and Ukraine begin to pursue such a program, will depend on the French, and of course, on what the Americans do next. Trump frequently talked about nuclear arms control treaties in his foreign policy
The U.S.
agenda.
is a great ally if you do what they
He
say.
seems to have an
Exactly.
obsession with the famous
Exactly.
treaties signed
But
in
if
the
you don't
1970s
do,
and
they
1980s,
will
limiting the number of nuclear
directly
warheads
against
between
it.
the
Yeah.
United States and the Soviet Union. These
It's all
treaties
about
happened
control.
when he was a young man and might have left a lasting impression on him as a high mark of what foreign policy achievements are supposed to be. What Trump forgets is that these treaties mattered because they were between superpowers that were leading alliances. If the Soviets or Americans had dismantled their alliances, these treaties would have been worthless. An arms control treaty that Trump could sign with Putin while sacrificing European allies for it would do nothing to limit nuclear weapons. The opposite, it would encourage the former American allies to pursue nuclear weapons after having
But also the counterpoint to this argument was the fact that at that point in time, the Allied forces served a purpose because they were all aiding one another. At this point in time, NATO is the United States. The NATO armed forces is the United's armed forces. We don't get really any military soldiers from most other nations. Maybe a handful here and there, but it's like 95% is US. It used to be more, it used to be like 55% of NATO was US military soldiers, but that has transitioned over time as, well, the US has always prided itself on its military. The other nations, not so much. So they don't have a strong military. So that also goes into it. So that's why NATO is seen as like a joke at this point in time, especially to Americans who know how it used to be and how it is now. That's why it's like, why are we defending people who, well, can't defend themselves or
abandoned
don't
just to
help?
get a treaty that Trump may think looks nice, but would ultimately be worthless. Trump has made nuclear proliferation far more likely in the world we now live in, especially if Trump's foreign policy now becomes the American standard. Thank you for watching. Don't forget the Discord server if you would like to.
Nice. Yeah. Again, being afraid of nukes is always a thing. There will always be those people who will utilize the power they have, and the U.S. is one of those. The U.S. is one of those who will always be like, we're superior because, well, 250 years ago we created a modern nation, and apparently we still think it's modern, even though anyone. I mean, look at India for example. India was, considered a third world country. It was enslaved by Britain for about 2 centuries, and constantly had a history of being invaded. But I think Britain was the only one to successfully conquer all of India and enslaved it for 2 centuries. Harvested it for all it was worth, brought it down to nothing. And within one lifetime, India went from being the bottom of the barrel, a trash heap that nobody wanted, that Britain left because there was nothing in it for them anymore, to becoming, well, in about 5 to 10 years. So I've been saying that a while, but yeah, like 90 years, going to be one of the world's superpowers. One of the world's superpowers. So in America always talks itself as like the best of the best. No, we've gotten stagnant. America's gotten stagnant. I mean, it's good that America's trying to push itself forward, but it's been stagnant for way too long that those who have gotten momentum can easily catch up and surpass, because we've been stuck at we've been stuck, and it's getting a while to get our foot free so we can even start moving forward. But yeah, that's that's what we're in. That's what we're in. That's where we're at. Oh, okay. All right. If all convert all the weapon nukes to nuclear energy, the scientific research for good of the Earth, not humanity only, then the humanity can grow from survival to real exploration without thinking of survival or money. The thing is, that is all well and good. The only way that works is if us human beings weren't here. We are too individualistic. We are too idealistic. We are too self-inclined to just believe ourselves to be just. There will never be a chance to where we actually willingly accept other perspectives when we believe ourselves to be absolute. That is the downside. As idealistic as that it would be, and as if that actually happened, the progress we could achieve would be absolutely amazing. The problem is we can't get to that point. And can never get to that point. Levi, you need more info about India. What Britain didn't left because it looted everything, but there was other thing too. Well, yeah, it was World War II, especially after the fact that everyone was starting to keep more an eye, because footage was coming back after the war. Like, they were keeping an eye on what was going on. Britain needed to leave. They needed to leave, and I think that's why the partition is such a great thing for them, because if the partition didn't happen, everyone would have been knowing exactly what's going on. Everyone would have seen what Britain had done to India, and Britain would have been in the hot seat. Britain would have been in the hot seat. They did not want to go through that. So they backed out, mainly because of the ramifications of World War II. But let's be honest, there was really nothing left for them. They had taken everything they could, other than a free manual labor, because India was a slave nation. They had to give that up at that point in time. The world was becoming too small. The world was becoming too small. They had to leave. Oh yeah, read the whole comment. Yeah, I should. Looted everything. There was other things too. As you don't know how many Indians had found World War for Britain. And what happened after they reached India after World War II. Not work, bro. We just need to break all ego. The thing is, you can never break people's ego. You You just can't. We just have to break all ego, and all become entitled and see the world as family. Yeah, that won't happen. That won't happen. As idealistic as that is. I don't know. Fought World War for Britain, and what happened after they reached India after World War II. But yeah, there was also those who were trying to free themselves from Britain. There was all there's a whole lot there. Like, sure, my blanket statement is even close to accurate, but that's the thing. I'm not going to spend a week trying to do an informational video onto the all the bullet points that just went into them leaving India. But that is a huge part of it. It's the World War II, the world's small. It's the fact that there really wasn't much for them, because they could easily cut it loose, because there was nothing for them. And the partition was honestly a blessing in disguise for them. It's always needed for a weapon that creates new technology. It's always needed for a weapon. Wait, what did you say? How was the One Piece episode? Oh, I haven't seen the recent one, but I've read the recent manga, so I don't know what episode they're doing. A lot of scientific discoveries has come due to war. India has a space program because of threat from China. Yeah, a threat from China.
You guys got a video? It's so bad.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Wait like that.